I think all people are born with the ability to be creative. What happens is people's lives go on different paths, takes them on different journeys, so maybe they never get the opportunity to explore that creativity. They never get to expound on it and see, where it can take them. But I think every human being is born with the ability to create. It just depends on what it is you choose to create. Do you create art? Do you create, food? Do you create moments? What is it that you're actually creating? But I think we all, as human beings are born with an ability to create something. There are those fortunate enough like myself who are able to tap into it at an early age. The earliest creative moments that I can remember for myself, I was probably about 10 years old, and my 5th grade teacher, Mr. Branch, Gloria Floyd Elementary, he knew that I wrote stories. I wrote creative stories, and I asked him one day if I could read my stories to the class as a fun part of the class of the day. And what ended up happening was he would let me read my story the last 30 minutes of school to my classmates. And that was like my earliest memories of me having an audience and having a performance and taking something that I created in my bedroom at home, which was a short story, a fictional story with all types of characters, and sitting, and have my classmates sit in front of me in a semicircle and, a bunch of 10, 11-year-olds listening to me read them a story that I wrote. I can't pinpoint my motivation or my inspiration to one thing or one person, because I'm highly motivated by my 2 older brothers, Simeon and Selwyn, because they are creatives in their own right, and they're still creating art in their own ways to this day, be it music, movies, film scores, documentaries, comic books. I've watched those 2 carve out their own lanes since I was a child. And they were always the ones that I tried to emulate. They're always the ones that I tried to copy in many different ways, from the way I dressed to the way I spoke to the way I carry myself, my demeanor, my body language, everything that my older brothers did, I tried to emulate as I was growing up. And still to this day, they're the whole motivation or inspiration factor behind the things that I do, because I always want my brothers to think that what I'm doing is cool. I want them to look and say, damn, my baby brother is dope. He's a dope DJ. He's a dope this. He can really rap. He can do this. I was always, kind of striving for their affection and appreciation and adoration. And I think I'm almost there. I think I almost got it. I never was someone who said I want to be great at a bunch of stuff. My passions evolved and adjusted as I got older, as I got into different things. But to me, everything that I've become involved in some way or another, they're interwoven with each other. So people always say, oh, jack of all trades, master of none. I've never bought into that type of negative way of thinking. I've always said, God has blessed us with such high ability and such mental capacity that we should be able to do a multitude of things at a high level if we can tap into our own pockets of genius in our minds. And that's always something that I firmly believed, and that's how I practice, my daily life. When I was a kid, I didn't think I would get into become a DJ. When I started DJing, I didn't think I was gonna get into photography. I didn't know when I started rapping that I would get into fashion. All these different things that I've become involved in they go hand in hand with each other. But in terms of trying to figure out, let me go be great at a bunch of stuff, that was never the thought process. It just kind of evolved that way as I got older. My first passion project would probably be the t-shirt line I started in high school. That was Q Gear. It was KUE, which was an acronym, and it stood for knowledge plus understanding equals experience. My friend Andre and I linked up and we said, we're gonna form this t-shirt line, because what ended up happening was I went to an entrepreneurship academy at FIU, Florida International University. And this is the summer before my 12th grade year. And the purpose of that program was to take about 100 minority students and teach us how to write business plans. And at the end of the course, they would take the top 3 business plans and grant them money to go start a business. And I, being somebody that always tried to dress like my brothers and steal their clothes and their watches and their sneakers, knowing their sneakers were too big for me, but I just wanted to wear, the cool sneakers to school. I was always in the back of my mind thinking about, I think I would be a dope designer. And the business plan that I wrote was to start a t-shirt line, and it actually came in second place as far as the top 3 business plans go. And I ended up getting a grant of $3,500 or $3,200. And I got with my friend Andre, who I was doing music with at the time, because we were already involved in making music as artists. And I said, we can come up with just a dope concept for t-shirts, and we'll sell them and just see how it works. And I remember we sat down one day and he came up with the logo. It was like a G and a Q symbol, and he combined it into one symbol. And he was already proficient in Photoshop back then. This is 1997. We're juniors, 16, 17 years old. So he was so far ahead of his time as far as being a creative. And we came up with this number that signified what Q Gear represented, which was the number 28, because he was born on the 2nd, I'm born on the 8th. And back then, every streetwear line had a number, RP 55, and FUBU had 05, and Fat Farm had 92, and I think we chose 28 because not only was it our birthdays, but it was also like the street that I lived on and the street he lived on, and it was all this numerology. We, everything we tried to do, we tried to have it make sense and have a deeper meaning than just a number. So when we said, we're gonna make these t-shirts and we're gonna trademark our logo, we're gonna trademark the name, and then we're gonna go try to get consignment deals in different stores around Miami. So if you can imagine me, in 12th grade, the bell rings at the end of school and I'm getting in my car and I'm driving up to 163rd Street Mall in North Miami to go talk to a clothing store general manager to try to talk a consignment deal. And he's looking at me like, what is this little kid doing here trying to talk business? But that's the type of person I've always been. That's who I've always been. And that's how I started on this entrepreneurial path and this passion project that actually ended up, kind of working out good as far as, being a high school kid doing it, because, DJ EFN from Drink Champs and Crazy Hood Productions, he was the first one to actually give me a consignment deal and say yes and carry our merch and our t-shirts and our sweaters in his clothing store. I wasn't that great of a student because I was always drawn to arts and creativity, and studying was never my thing. Books was never my thing. But I would do really well in elective classes. I would do really well in the gifted program and anything that dealt with creativity. And I didn't get a lot of A's for grades in any of my school years. I got a lot of B's. I got some C's. I never got any D's or F's, but I only ever got 2 A's, and one of them was in Spanish class, and the other A that I got, I distinctly remember, was in my photography class. And that was largely due to a project that I did, our end of the school year project. Seeing the movie Love Jones is the reason why I chose photography as my elective class. Because in the movie, there's a moment where they show these black and white monochrome images, and I was just captivated by them. Like, I remember just like yesterday, sitting in the movie theater, and these images pop up on the screen super big, and they're like an old man with a hat on, and then like a record store sign, and a girl with a head wrap on, and it was like real people, real life, not posing, but very candid, very emotional, the shadowing and everything. And I don't even know what the correct terminology was then, but I knew what I saw was dope and it spoke to me in a way. And that's the reason why I chose photography as my elective course, because I wanted to do what I saw in this movie. I wanted to capture people and tell, visuals and and share a mood from a camera. And and that's how that birthed my interest in it.
Thought to live on Sunday, here we go.
I was DJing the biggest clubs in the city, for sure, Live and Story. You're talking 1,500 people in a room on any given night, and to literally have that come to a screeching halt overnight with no sign or indication of when it's coming back, yeah, you're gonna freak out a little bit. I, myself, and everyone else in the hospitality industry who depended on the money that we made at these events and these parties are like, okay, so what now? It's been a decade or more. It's been 11 years I've been doing this one thing. This has been my livelihood. What am I supposed to do now? Go be a mechanic? Go work at McDonald's? Like, no. You start having these conversations with yourself, and everybody's talking about the pivot. What's your pivot gonna be? How are you gonna pivot? What are you gonna do next? And then for me, it was many a night not knowing what was gonna happen. How am I gonna eat? What am I gonna eat? Where am I gonna get the money to buy groceries from? There's no pension for DJs and entertainment. There is no insurance per se. A lot of myself and my fellow DJs, we don't have health insurance and dental, but we got car payments and bills, and those bills keep coming. They're still coming, but it's not an easy thing to try to process something that happens instantaneously. I was just taking it one day at a time, and then one day after another day after the next day, I started reflecting on my life, on the things that I'd spent the past 20 years doing as an adult, things that I never got to do. And then that's how I got back on photography. I'm like, man, I got this camera here, like I haven't even had a chance to use it because I'm in the club every night and I'm the one that's being photographed and I'm the one that's being videotaped, but it's still sitting here. Well, I don't have a club to go to now. Just go ahead and pick that up. And what I realize is that we're living in history right now. The pandemic of 2020 is going to be something that will be remembered forever, and I wanted to do my part to at least capture some of what was happening around me, because it was something that I'd never seen before. I'd never seen 100 people with masks on lined up outside of food banks getting boxes of food to eat. For myself and my friends and those that I work with, this was all new territory for us. This was a new experience for us, and a lot of us haven't handled it very well. And I felt like it should be documented and captured. I've always been someone that's taken an opportunity and maximized it. And I remember I was taking photos during the George Floyd protests. So I'm seeing all these cameras around and I'm like, well, what's gonna make my photos different than the hundreds of other people who are out there taking photos? And I thought to myself, I'm not 100% sure, but I bet none of these people are thinking about doing a book of these photos. We become such a digital and a digitized world. The concept of looking at something bigger than 6 inches is like so far removed, unless it's, I don't know, going to the movies or something. And even now, they've made it so we can watch movies on our phone and we flip the phone sideways, and now you're, but, and especially with photos, with Instagram, it's like, I think you lose the beauty of a photograph when it's confined to a phone screen. And I said the images that I'm capturing need to be immortalized differently. They need to be bigger, and they need to be presented in a more impactful way. And that's when I came up with the idea of doing a book of photography. When I fixate my mind on accomplishing something, I might not know how it's gonna get done, but it's gonna get done. So from the moment I said that I'm gonna do a book, there was no turning back. You know, whatever it was gonna take to execute that and bring it to fruition was gonna happen. I spent 10, 12 years, you know, building a following and building a brand in myself that I believe people bought into me as an entertainer and as a brand, as Fly Guy. And I was able to remove myself from social media for 2.5 months. And in that time of no Instagram, no Facebook, etc., I launched a GoFundMe campaign to help finance this venture because I've been on food stamps since April. So there was no way that I could financially pay for a book to get done. I could create it because I have a computer and, you know, I have a camera and I have the images and, you know, but I couldn't produce it because I didn't have the finances. And so many people that I reached out to directly donated to this GoFundMe campaign that I launched. And that is how I was able to finance the manufacturing of this book. And not only that, but that also is what enabled me to do a photography exhibit to promote the book.
To support my inaugural photography exhibit and the release of my book of photography, To Miami with Love. I thank you guys for being patient, mingling, gathering, having the drinks. Thank you to Le Jardin for the espresso martinis. I'll tell you more about that later. But for now, let me officially welcome you to Miami with Love. Come on.
Some people thought that nobody would really show up to the exhibit, first of all. And I want to say there were, I don't know, close to 100 people that came. I didn't need the validation of other people, but I needed my own inner voice to say, yes, Rahsaan, you can continue to evolve. You can pivot and execute things at a high level despite what other people might say about it, despite the doubt that you receive from friends or family members, despite not having the money in your bank account to do it. You will find a way. You will find a way to execute things. You will find the help that you need. You will find the support that you need in some way, shape, or form, and it's gonna get done. And that's all the validation that I ever needed. You know, I remember flying to Detroit to go visit the factory that's manufacturing the book. And I'm just sitting there in this office, and these people don't know me. They don't know anything about my DJ life. They don't know, you know, the lifestyle that I had before this. But they're telling me how impressed they are with the images. For all they know, this could have been my 10th book. But in the back of my mind, I'm like, wow, if this is how they think about my first attempt at making a book, then I know I'm on the right path. As I continue to carve out my life path, I'm still moving in the right direction. I'm still moving forward. I'm not regressing. I'm progressing. I wasn't expecting when this pandemic hit in March 2020 that in December 2020, there would be business establishments that want my art hanging on their wall. There would be people buying books and I'm selling out of books. There would be a hotel in Brickell happy to have me there doing an event. You know, these aren't things that I expected that I could foresee, but they happen through blessings and faith and passion. 2020 was a year of refinement. It's a year that showed me who your true friends are, who really cares about you, who doesn't care about you. It shows me what my business acumen is. It shows what my darkest thoughts in the deepest places of my mind are. It's a year of enlightenment and refinement, you know. It's shed light on a lot of things, good and bad. And if there's one thing that I can take from this year in a positive light, it's being able to get back up after being knocked way down. It's the year of the pivot.